Hello and welcome to Jennifer Knatters. I am Jennifer and this is my knitting and nattering video podcast. Today is the 30th of January, an inauspicious day in the UK, and I'm hoping I can get this out pretty quickly. It's been raining off and on, there's a lot of rain, and I also have a pretty persistent cough and a sinus infection. So if I need to pause this a lot, I'm really sorry. As I said, my name is Jennifer. I live here in Inverness, northern Scotland, and I live here with my husband, my 2 children, and 2 cats. So that's us. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated just because I've been coughing so much today. And this is actually the second time I've started this video. So hopefully I will find my rhythm and we will be able to get through this. I actually only have about 15 minutes to record before I have to go get my children. This just has not been, and my husband put a packet of cookies for the children, biscuits for the children, on my notes. So I'm sorry if you could hear it crinkling when I moved it. I have 2 finished objects this week. The first one are my Anemochory socks of long ago being cast on. If you were watching last, I think it was like October, I had knit the first sock and I'd started the cuff on the second sock when I lost my project bag. And I was able to get the first sock, the project bag, and the ball of yarn back. But the bit I'd knit and the needles and the stitch markers are all lost. So I eventually, that sat in timeout for a while, and I bought some little mini skeins trying to match the shade of pink. It has started raining again, so I'm sorry if it's really noisy. But anyway, I bought some little minis, and because when I weighed the ball of yarn that I recovered and I picked out all the little bits of dirt and everything, the sock that I'd already knit and the ball of wool weighed exactly the same amount. And I thought, oh, well, if there's any differences in my tension or anything, I don't know if the yarn is still wet, if it's what's going on. There's lots of things that can make yarn way different than what it actually is. So I bought some minis, and then I eventually cast this back on, I think after Christmas. I don't think it was quite the New Year. And it turns out I did have enough. I just have a small, tiny little ball of wool left. These have been washed. As you can see, I've got a couple of dark streaks where the dirt just hasn't come out yet. It looks a lot darker on the screen than it does in person. But I will continue to wash them, and hopefully eventually some of that dirt will come out, and if not, well, my socks just have a bit of a stripe on them. So there's 2 of them. This is the Anemochory sock by Hammersen, Violently Domestic, and I knit it in Abstract Cat, a sock blend. Colorway is Bonnie, but this is pretty deep stash. This is probably about 8-9 years since I bought it. And that's from the Yarn Cake down in Glasgow is where I would have gotten that. But yeah, that's my hot pink Anemochory socks are finally done. Just looking for some place to put this where it's not going to clink. And the other project I finished, which I had only started this last time, is this. It is the Soft Kitty hat. And this I knit for my eldest child, who turned 7 last weekend. And when it's on, the ears stick up really well. This is a little small for me. It fits her really well. She basically tried it on when I asked her to and hasn't worn it since, but she does like to dress up as a black cat. So now she has cat ears. Yeah, so that's a wee hat I made for her. This is by Patternery, is the designer's name. There's no, like, it's just a username listed with the pattern. And it's got this little cable detail, and you sew down the ears. And I knit it in drops big merino, and then this is some leftover just pink wool from a jumper I knit her a while back. So I knit that for her. Those were 2 finished objects. And then onto my whips. I've been working on my Fika shawl by Carrie Westerman, and I apologize that I'm in the middle of the row. I try to always be at the end, but my life has not been like that this week. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a hot mess right now. It will block out. Lace always looks so much better after you wash it. I mean, you don't even really have to stretch it all that much, but you wash it and just let it kind of settle, and it looks so much better. So I've done that much since last we spoke. Each row just takes that much longer because you add a lace repeat at either end, the edge, either side of the middle, and then the edge again. And this stitch marker says I'm halfway through the number of repeats I need to do for the full-size shawl. This is the suggested yarn for the pattern, which I can't pronounce and won't even pretend to try. The color is a bit rustier than I like, but yeah, I picked the red. And again, this is something that I've had in my stash for quite some time. I think about 4 years since the pattern came out, and I know I bought the wool shortly after the pattern came out. And then, I mean, it's been caked up. I've got 2 of them because it calls for 2. This is the yarn, and I think it is a Finnish yarn, but either way, I do not know how to pronounce that. So I've worked on that a little bit. I mean, my big push was to finish the socks and then knit the hat for Christina. Her birthday was Saturday, and I think the yarn for that came on Thursday. So I had to hurry to get that done. And another one I've put a bit of effort into working on is... Are you still attached? No, you're not. There's a random yarn. I did the opposite of squaring off this side. I've added these ones along here. I don't particularly know what any yarn is because they all just live in a big bag. I've largely balled them up, and then I've got 3 over here. And I think actually since last time we spoke, I did this one. So I've done 2, and then I finished off this row. And I think it's a good size now. So I think when I finish this row, which is down here, so I'll show you from this side, that this is a good width. It's not quite my arm length, but it's pretty good. My 7-year-old has asked that this be her blanket, so I think it's a good size for a UK single bed. And then I will just make it longer. So that's that one. Doot doot doot. Put all the stuff back in the bag. Doot 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 doot. And this bag is actually a prize that I got from the Lonely Knitter podcast. She did a before 2020 knit along at the end of last year. We had, I think it was about 2 months, and how much stuff could you get done, and I won this for the chatter thread. And look at that pattern matching. Here we come, here we come. And there's the seam. So it's all patterned. It's a nice big bag, sturdy drawstring. I mean, it's well made. Last week I was talking a bit about why bags are not perfect for me. And this one is just a little bit taller. I'd like them to be just a bit more square, but I think tall bags are kind of in vogue right now. This is Libby's tail. Libby, say hi. Hello. Hello. Don't be like that. You came up here and were barking at me. So this is my prime bag. It is really well made. It is really sturdy. I believe this is Busy Pottering. I'm just looking to see if there's a label inside. Yes. Inside it says Busy Pottering. It's got really cute stripy fabric, and even the pocket is double-sided. It's really sturdy. It's really well made. It is a delightful bag. The only thing for me is that I know very little about England. I'm from California near San Francisco, and now I live in northern Scotland, so I'm inferring that these are all the names of like beach resort towns down in England. Never been to a beach resort town in England. The only beach resort town I've been to in Scotland is Nairn. Oh, Libby, say hi. Say hi, pretty girl. There's my pretty girl. Libby is actually my husband's cat, but he is at work, so she has come to yell at me and tell me I'm supposed to be. It's just a rogue tail. Rogue tail. Last week I talked about finishing the January sock project, well, the January project for Boost Your Knitting, which happened to be a pair of socks. And having finished those, I cast on a new walkabout socks, and this is just a plain vanilla sock from memory. And this is the RNLI colorway version 1. Excuse me. That Ripples Crafts, Helen of Ripples Crafts did as a fundraiser last year after, I think it was a presenter for the Daily Mail or some trash rag TV show, was complaining that some of the money that the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, I don't really know what the acronym is for, but it's a lifeboat service that is crowdfunded. This isn't even a government service. This is a crowdfunded lifeboats for the Scottish Highlands and Islands. And some of the money they collect, they send overseas to teach swimming lessons to help children not drown in other countries. And some trash rag person discovered this fact, even though it is all over their website. It is a clear mark of like what they do with their funding, that this is supposed to be a British thing, and how dare they send money overseas. So this is a fundraiser, and the money she collected was specifically earmarked to go towards that fund, the teaching children in other countries, less advantaged countries, to swim so that they don't drown. So that's that colorway, and it's really pretty, and that's my vanilla sock, and it's just a sock coming on. That's my walking about project. And I have one more, I don't think you can even call it cast on. I have one more project I have started this week, which I started just yesterday, and it is a corner to corner blanket, a crochet blanket, and this is in Sirdar color wheel. And I believe this colorway is Follow the Rainbow. I mean, on the ball band it's color 202, which is a lot less evocative, but it's the kind of neon rainbow color. I am the world's worst crocheter. I have to look up, I can do a chain, that I know how to do. Every other instruction I have to look up how to do it every time. And it doesn't help that the UK terminology uses the exact same words as the US terminology, but they mean different things. So, for instance, this uses what in the UK is a double stitch. No, in the UK it's a treble stitch, and in the US it's a double stitch. And the US does have a treble stitch, or the UK has a double stitch, and anyway, same words, different things. So you have to make sure you know which terminology your pattern uses. And I found a nice written tutorial on how to make this, and the instructions were to chain 6 and then go back 4 and do, this was a US pattern, so double stitch 3 times and then chain 6 and do, repeat from the beginning, and that gets you your first 2 squares. And then it said slip stitch chain 3, do, and you know, like each one of those makes a block. And I couldn't, there were no instructions for slip stitch. So I eventually found some instructions online for how to do a slip stitch. And then it turns out they hadn't told me where to do it, because I'm just like, I'm right there. So I'm like, okay, well, I just go over one and do the slip stitch. It turns out, I don't know if you can see this. This is at a point where I would do 6 and start a new block. But when you do the slip stitch, you're supposed to bring it over to here. This loop over here, which is where you've done the chain 3, and then these are the 3 double stitches, and I've turned it around to start going back. But when you do another block here and then you bring it over, you go through that loop and that brings it over, and then you can do your stitches across. There was nothing in the instructions, my written instructions, that explain that. And I guess maybe if you're a crocheter, you just know like that's the loop you're aiming for. That's my alarm to go pick up my children. So anyway, I wound up having to watch a video tutorial, which of course was then in British terminology, which is fine because I have no preconceived notions of what I'm supposed to do when given a certain set of instructions. I just found a spot where I only did 2 double stitches instead of 3. You can see it's a little bit smaller, not a problem. But yeah. Oh, and there's another one. I was doing the blue, I think, shortly before bed, the edge of that blue. I had finished the green. Anyway, I am terrible at crocheting, and I'm already getting a lot better at this. And by the time I finish this blanket, I have 3 balls of this wool, 1 that I'd had in stash, and then 2, because when I had to order 2 balls of wool for this hat, because I got to like there in the instructions, and then needed to add in a new ball of wool. So I needed just barely 2 balls of wool for that. And the shipping was basically the same cost as the wool. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. I should get something else at the same time. And their color wheel, which I already had 1 of in stash, was on sale. So I thought, okay, I'll get 2 more and then I can kind of do a blanket with them. So I'm going to start with this one and see how big it gets. And then either it'll get wide enough that I think I'll just make it longer, or if it's not wide enough, then I'll use up to half of the second one, and see how big that gets me. And then I can, I mean, if I feel like I'm really going to need more, I can order more, or I can just make it 3 balls big. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how big this gets me. I don't even know. There's 150 grams in this cake of yarn, which is approximately 520 meters, 568 yards, and it's 80/20 acrylic wool. So it's got a little bit of wool, but a lot of acrylic. It is machine washable, but please do not dry, it says. So yeah, I will see how I get on with that. I have noticed like my hand was a bit sore yesterday working on it, so I may need to get a more ergonomic, because this is, I mean, I believe this hook is one, now I have to unhook it, haha. I believe this is one that I got from my mother, but they certainly have more ergonomic styles now where the handles are bigger, or you know, like have rubber grips and stuff like that to make it gentler on one's hands. And I imagine that this blanket will take a lot of little squares to make. So it's starting to rain again, and I need to get ready to go get my children. My timer is set on how long it takes to walk to pick up the older child when I have the younger child at home, but they're both there today, so it doesn't take quite so long to get there. I will hopefully record more of this later, although it might be tonight. So I'm sorry, I am so out of it. I will try to be in a better headspace when I do this again, but I will finish the rest later. Hello, I am back from collecting my children from school and nursery. I believe they both had a good day. They both report that they had fun. In Catherine, my 3-year-old's case, it's a bit mumbly and you don't quite get all the details, but she seemed very cheerful when I picked her up. And so hopefully the whole I don't like nursery thing is over, because I think she does like nursery. My older one loved nursery. Took her a while to warm up to it because she was scared of other children, but she loved the part of nursery that was actually nursery. And she even wanted to stay late after nursery, which we paid for because she actually wanted to go to school where there were other people and she might have to play with them. But I think the reason she liked staying late after school was because most of the kids went home. So it was a much higher ratio. Well, I don't think it was even a higher ratio of staff to kids. It was a higher ratio of toys to kids. Oh, and Catherine says she got to be special helper today, which means when it was tidy up time, she got to ring the handbell. So, second week in nursery, she's already ringing the handbell. It's like 6th day of nursery because she only goes 2 days a week. See, I'm still a bit out of it. Back to knitting news. I have 2 knit-alongs that start. One starts tomorrow, which is the first pattern release in Isolda's Colorwork Club, because they, her company, she has a small business employing other people at her shop and to help her with customer service kind of stuff. So Isolde Teague and her company, they weren't sure how Brexit, which starts I guess after today, they weren't entirely sure how that would affect like postage and import duties and all sorts of charging VAT for other European countries, or whatever their local equivalent of VAT is, the tax, value added tax. So she's like, I can't really do a club. But then it turned out that they're keeping most of the existing laws between the UK, the trade agreement laws between the UK and the EU for a year. So posting things until, well, 11 months until the end of 2020. So she's doing a small pattern club, a small club. And she had 3 different colors. You could sign up to get the kit, and then you could just do the pattern. So I'm just doing the pattern. I've got lots of, her pattern I believe is in fennel wool, which is Finnish. My 7-year-old is now yelling for me. But I've got a lot of mostly Shetland and other UK breed Shetland-like wools in lots and lots of different colors. So I think this way I'll be able to pick colors. I was tempted by the bright one, I really was, but there was also like some neon orange in there. And I'm not really an orange and yellow kind of person. There was a neutrals, which was like natural sheep shades, grays and browns and creams. And then there was a classic, which was kind of navy and off-white and red and like those kind of colors. And then there was a brights, which was basically these colors. And some of those colors I love and I'm okay with, and some of those colors I kind of don't. So if there had been a warm tones versus cool tones, I might have felt more comfortable picking one, but I decided to just go for the pattern only for this. So that the first pattern comes out tomorrow, and then yeah, tomorrow's the end of the thing, because the 31st is tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. I keep thinking today is Friday, and that's what's throwing me off. Tomorrow is Brexit. And then on Saturday, it's the first day of February, and that's when the final Boost Your Knitting pattern, I mean, it doesn't go live or anything, but February is the month for the final Boost Your Knitting pattern, which is to knit a bunny rabbit. I think the pattern's Ella Austin off the top of my head, but I could be wrong, so I'm sorry if it is someone else. And it is, it's to knit a little bunny who has a little scarf, shawl, and it is finishing techniques for knitting toys. So I think it's gonna be like how to sew on the face, how to attach the limbs properly, things like that. So yeah, those 2 start. And I kind of really want to cast on new projects, which is why I went with the crochet blanket, because I'm like, oh, that's using up things I have and shouldn't, I don't know, should still let me work on other things. It makes sense in my head. It all makes sense in my head. So yeah, moving on to family stuff. As I mentioned, it was Christina's birthday. She's now 7, and she had one friend over the day. Her birthday was Saturday, so she had one friend over after school on Friday, and it was originally supposed to be a sleepover, but the friend had been coughing a lot, which I have a lot of sympathy for, but she had been waking up a lot in the night and crying because her head hurts and she was coughing too much and stuff like that. So her family said she can go over, have dinner, and then she'll just come home for bedtime. So that's what we did. For her birthday, Christina got the regular stuff like pajamas and new trousers, because she always seems to grow over Christmas, or like by Christmas break. It is clear that she's outgrown last year's trousers. So she got new trousers, new pajamas, she got some books, and then she got a whole bunch of pushing stuff. She's absolutely obsessed with pushing. She got a big squishy pushing. She had a pushing gift bag. She got pushing birthday cards from her family members. She got a little magnet set of pushings with like accessories. So I just got a text message from my husband. So text messages. She got lots of little pushing things. She got a new pushing notebook to write her stories in. Oodles of pushing stuff. And then with her allowance, which because we've all been poorly, we haven't been leaving the house much lately. So she had about 4 weeks worth of allowance. And then Claire's, who sell pushing stuff, were having their New Year sale, their get rid of old stuff sale. So she got a pushing backpack and a slightly smaller, really squishy, soft pushing. So she got all the pushings. And now she's saying she does want the pushing water bottle that all last year she was like, no, I have a water bottle, no. So now she needs a pushing water bottle to go in her backpack. And she wants a pushing pencil case. And I think maybe one of my children is walking. I heard footsteps, but I'm not sure. And then Sunday was my husband's birthday, Chris's birthday, so he is 53 now. Everybody's birthdays are January except mine. Mine isn't until May. Even Chris's parents' birthdays, they're both passed on, but their birthdays were both January as well. So it really is just me in another month. And yeah, that's kind of what we've been up to this past week and a half. And media-wise, I wanted to start talking a bit more about things I am loving in the media. I haven't really read any great books so far this year. I have books on my pad like on my Kindle, that I really want to read. And I'm in the middle of a book that I don't hate, so I'm not going to just toss it aside and not read it, but it's not so incredibly interesting that I just can't put it down. I haven't really read anything earth-shattering. It is the 30th of January and I've only finished one book so far. And even that, I think I counted it for last year because I was down to like the last 10% of the book. I just didn't quite manage to finish it, New Year's Eve. So I finished it New Year's Day and I'm like, no, we'll take that one for last year. So I guess I haven't finished any books yet this year. But I've been listening I've been watching my watch and knit right now is Community, and I've just got to the 4th season and it is hilarious and I love it, and it does have some problems. Like I remember I love it but I hate it did an episode on their podcast about Community, and one of the things they talked about is Chevy Chase's character says a lot of really inappropriate and inoffensive things, and the joke is that he's saying these terrible things that you shouldn't say. And their latest episode for this week is The Office, and they talk the same way. The manager, I've never seen The Office, but the manager, Steve Carell's character, is the same way, where the joke is he says these horrible, inappropriate things that no one should say. And they talk a lot about how that's not the joke anymore. Like, nowadays, you can't just do that and have that be the joke, because even if you mean everyone to be like, oh, that's a terrible thing to say, you still said it. And it's not something that should be said. Like, the joke can't be, like, it's not enough to shine a light and be like, oh, we did the thing we shouldn't do. You have to just not do it. The other particular problem with that is, from what I understand, it's not particularly acting for him, that he actually is a really, the nicest, like, product of his times is what they say, but from what I understand, even in the 80s, people thought he was really unpleasant, and he was not nice to other people. So he's on it the whole time, and everybody says season 4, the one I've just started watching, is like the weakest season, the one they don't like. And that's because the showrunner was fired for being sexually inappropriate with staff. I'm getting this off of IMDb and from what they had said, so there's certainly no specifics. I had no idea what it is. But my understanding is that he was fired from the show for being sexually inappropriate. And then because the 4th season without him wasn't as magical as the other ones, it didn't have that same spark. It's like when Aaron Sorkin left The West Wing, they brought him back. And they're like, oh, well, we need your genius more than we need you to keep your hands to yourself. And I don't know, it was inappropriate touching or just comments, or I have no idea what it was, but that's what. Sorry about that. My husband came through. I think I was pretty much done talking about Community. It's hilarious. It's not perfect. If you take anything away from this, it's that I love it, but I hate it is wonderful. It's actually one of my favorite, it's probably my favorite podcast. It's really just a special thing. It is 2 women, Jocelyn Getty and Kat Angus, and they're both Canadian. I think they're near Toronto. They're Toronto based, and they didn't know each other before. I think they'd met, but they weren't friends. They weren't anything. And then one of their mutual friends said, we think you and this other person should do a podcast together. So they started one, and now they're the best friends, and they just love and respect each other so much. And they have so much in common because they're both very much type A personalities, and they're watching movies and TV shows, and they're just like, they broke the rules. You can't do that. Oh my God, stress. But one of my favorite things about the show is that they spend a lot of time validating the heck out of each other. Like, that is their basic. They don't have the same, one of them likes rom-coms and one of them likes horror movies, and, like the other one, not into those things in the same way. But they are like, I'm really glad you like it. Not for me, but I'm genuinely happy that this brings you pleasure. And I think we could do with a lot more of that in life. Just validating the heck out of each other. And they have, like, if you have a favorite movie or TV show, they don't do TV shows as much as they do movies. The Ever After one was really just a delight to listen to. They've done so much. They've got several years of back catalog now. And they are just absolutely a delight. And I would say pick any episode you want and just jump right in. One of my favorite things is I started listening to it, and they're like, I hi bye lie everyone, I hi bye lie. And I'm like, I hi bye lie? That is completely awful. What are you saying? Because it's the initials. I hate it, but I love it. And after I'd watched a couple, I went back and started from the beginning of the podcast, and like the third one of them goes, I hi bye lie, and the other one just like, what the heck was that? That's the dumbest thing. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And then it became their catch thing. So yeah, they're really special, and I think anyone should watch that. But my next media one that I've been consuming recently is another podcast called You're Wrong About. And I think one of the co-hosts, Sarah Marshall, has been a guest on the I Hate It But I Love It, though I can't think of any specific. I'm sure she has more than once. But she does a podcast with someone else whose name I can't think of right now. And anyway, he is, one of the nice things about the I Hate It But I Love It is they're just a little bit younger than me. They're like 5 years younger than me. Their birthday's the same day, but different years. So they're very much millennials, and like a lot of their cultural touchstones are similar to mine. You're wrong about the woman. It's a man and a woman, a gay man and a woman, a straight woman. And she's like 10 years younger than me. So her cultural touchstone is very different, but he's just a year younger than me. So like the big cultural stuff is pretty much the same. But what they do is they go back and they take things from US social history, I'd call it, like, you know, like collective memory kind of things, stuff that the rest of the world may be aware of, but it's, you know, it's very much US centric. Sorry about that. My husband had come in, which is the last time I stopped, and now he's gone back out again. But they talk about things in US history, social phenomenon perhaps is the word, and they talk about like what the common perception is, and then they talk about like what actually happened. Some of my favorite ones, they do one on the obesity epidemic. This one is not as US centric as the others because it's kind of just, I think that's even the most modern one. It's just like this idea is still very pervasive that fat kills and causes all these other diseases, and that if you want to, you can lose weight. So they go through and completely debunk that. Another good one is the one on Kitty Genovese, and she, in the 1960s, was a very famous case where coming home from work one night, and I think I knew she was coming home from a bar. I didn't know she was the bar manager, and that it was a gay bar, and she was a lesbian. But she was coming home from a bar after work, and so she'd taken the subway and then or parked her car at the subway station, or I'm a little vague on the details now. But while she was walking back to her apartment, a stranger stabbed her to death. Except it was like there were multiple, like, you know, people turned their lights on, and so he ran off, and then he came back and stabbed her some more, and like no one called the cops, and no one tried to help her, and no one tried to scare him away. And it turns out, and it was this whole big thing about how, you know, like urban people who live in cities don't care about their fellow human beings. And it turns out she lived in a very suburban area. It wasn't like inner city like it's presented as. He only came back once. He attacked her, ran off, and came back. There's really only one person. There was a night watchman in one of the buildings, like the only apartment building there. And like he heard something and he thought about getting his baseball bat and going out and checking, and then he decided to go downstairs and take a, you know, go to sleep for the night instead. And everyone else actually, like, they did try to help as much as they knew. Like, no one really knew what was going on. No one had a clear line of sight. They couldn't really hear things. And like when you hear about it now, you're like, well, why didn't anyone call 911? 911 exists because of this incident. People didn't really know who to call, because the neighborhood had a lot of what we would now call LGBT people. Like if you call the cops are going to harass you, stuff like that. So there was a lot more going on, and it wasn't this bystander indifference that it's been presented as. I don't want to give the whole thing away. There's a lot more to it. They do one on Stonewall. Right now, the way the show works is one of them researches a topic and then presents it to the other one. So they alternate weeks who's presenting a topic and who is being debunked, which I find really nice, because I think if it was a case of a man sitting there and constantly explaining to a woman, that I would have to like punch my hand through a plate of glass. Like I would not be here for that. But because it's back and forth, and I'll be honest, the gay man part helps a lot, because I don't need the straight white male lecturing energy in my life any more than I already do. I'm like completely full up on that for the rest of my life. The only straight white male I ever want to teach me about anything ever again is my husband. My husband can teach me shit. Everyone else just sit down and shut up. But they're currently Sarah is doing a deep dive in the O.J. Simpson trial, and she's done like 6 or 9 episodes. I can't even think, but she's done a couple on Nicole Brown, the ex-wife who got murdered. She's done 2. There was one on Marcia Clark, the prosecutor. There have been 2 on, no, I can't remember, O.J. Simpson's girlfriend at the time of the murder. And there's one on Kato Kalin. And it's just absolutely, like, there's so much information that wasn't part of the trial, that wasn't public, that wasn't, in there. So there's all this information. I was 13 at the time. Or was it 92? I might have been 11. I was young. So they've done a whole bunch of different episodes. They've done like Anita Hill and Monica Lewinsky. They've done all sorts of things. Again, very much US centric. I don't think there's that much to appeal, other than it's just a very interesting podcast. But I don't think there are cultural touchstones if you're not steeped in that kind of US culture. They did Nirvana and just a bunch of stuff like that. And one of their favorite things is redeeming women who are blamed for scandals, like Monica Lewinsky and Anita Hill, where you're like, they're the bad people, the people who got blamed. Monica Lewinsky, the least powerful person involved, is the one whose name you remember as like, oh, the Monica Lewinsky scandal. It's like, no, she was just an intern who was getting off and flirting with a powerful man, and he should have kept it in his pants. And like going forward after that, these women are basically social pariahs. So she does a lot to like redeem the women, the maligned women of history, and explain what was really going on. Enron was a really interesting one, because I really didn't, I know it happened, but I didn't understand it at the time. And Exxon Valdez was another one that was really, really interesting. So there's a lot of really good podcasts, and there's other ones where I didn't even know anything about what it was until I listened to it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, I highly recommend the podcast. Although it is the kind of thing where if you start an episode, you want to yell at your children for interrupting you. They're like, no, I need to go back to tidying because I'm trying to listen to this. Leave me alone. So don't listen to it when you're supposed to be supervising your children. There was one other thing that I didn't write down, but I wanted to talk about. Oh, music. I've been listening to Six, the musical, which is about Henry VIII's 6 wives. And it goes through and they each get a song about who they are and why they're caught up in this. And they're like, ugh, Henry, why does everybody remember us because of him and not because of who we are, which is really interesting people. The only thing I don't like about it is Anne Boleyn, and they present her as, I understand why it is. The song's nice. It's catchy and upbeat and everything. But they present her as a very ditzy person who cheated on Henry and got killed for it. And that is not the version of history that I think is most likely to have happened. I believe it was entirely political. She went to her death, her execution, maintaining her innocence. She says she never cheated on him, that she still loved him right up until he cut her head off. And anyway, and she was also very politically savvy, very intelligent, had lots of ideas about lots of things. And that was kind of what, people didn't like how powerful she was, how much influence she had, and they wanted that influence for themselves. So having gotten rid of her, they were then able to put forward another queen who would influence things in the favor of their families, which is a lot of what happened. So yeah, I really like it. I like all the songs. I especially like the finale. I can listen to that all day long, and have on occasion. So that's kind of where I am in media, and I think that's going to wrap up this podcast. Hopefully next week I will have a little more time. I have not gotten anything done on any of the days when Catherine has been at nursery and I'm like, oh, I'll have 2 hours to do things. She's there for 3 hours, but I figured 2 hours to do things. It hasn't worked out. Footsteps are coming. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you.
Hi.
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 Do you like nursery? Yeah. Did you have fun today? Did you go to gym? Did you do dancing? Was that fun? Did you have cornflakes for snack? Yeah. Did you paste things onto paper? Is that what you were doing when Mommy left? Did you play with your friends? Were you the special helper? What does the special helper do?
Tidy up.
You helped tidy up? Did you ring the bell so everyone would know it was time to tidy up? Is the bell big and heavy? Does it make a big loud clang, clang, clang? Yeah. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.